Frank Carlyle, and I'd like to show you my city. There are two really good places to do this. Up on Harrington Hill is one, and the other one is this way. Follow me.
Please make your way to the life jacket assembly points. Following the assembly, also ask you not to stand on the seats or sit on the ship's roof.
This is the most wonderful view of Liverpool from the vantage point of the good people of Wirral. Aren't they lucky? This waterfront has seen many changes over the years, but it's only recently that the Skyline has taken on a new profile. Office blocks, apartments, skyscrapers and hotels. One thing is for sure, the Cunard, the Port of Liverpool building and the Liver building are still the most stunning. There are many pieces that make up the wonderful jigsaw that is Liverpool. So come with me and discover some of Liverpool's streets and statues. What a fella. Frederick Johnny Walker, unbelievable man during the Battle of the Atlantic. Frederick Johnny Walker, but he was actually named after the whiskey Johnny Walker because he liked a little tipple. But he became one of the greatest German U-boat hunters in World War II. He captured and sank more U-boats than any other sea captain. Unfortunately, at the age of 48, and through sheer stress, he died in 1944. This Plymouth-born man came to Liverpool and he loved the city. Yet, when he went out during the Battle of the Atlantic, he was blasting out on a ship to get all his men geared up to fight the Germans and the German U-boat. A hunting we will go, a hunting we will go. And I blasted and blasted and blasted until he blasted out the German U-boats, which he did very successfully. This man richly deserves to be in Liverpool folklore because he was such a hero. He's not looking over the Mersey now for U-boats. He's actually looking at the ferries and keeping an eye on them. As a young boy, when I used to come down here to the Pier Head to get on the ferry to go over to New Brighton, I used to see this statue. It wasn't the colour as it was now, it was green. And in 2008, getting ready for the capital of culture, it was restored to the bronze as you see today. It's all right about me going on when I was a little lad, but I never even mentioned who this fella was on horseback. It's Edward VII. Edward was the eldest of Queen Victoria's children, and he waited many, many years to finally become king. And we all know in 1887, Queen Victoria celebrated her Diamond Jubilee, 60 years ruling. However, in 1901, Queen Victoria died, and Edward VII was finally king. The statue was finally unveiled in 1916 in the middle of World War I, and there was throngs of people, thousands upon thousands of people waiting here, the Pier Head, for it to be unveiled, and the sculptor was Sir William Gascon. More on streets and statues of Liverpool, and you're going to love this because this is a quirky little thing, and it's John King's 1998 A Case History. So when people actually come along Hope Street, they stop, admire, and obviously make comments. But what's it all about? Well, we know that Liverpool's a great port, and people, whether they're students or migrants, come and go. Hence, a case history. Oh, and by the way, there are some names on the cases. I don't think you'll know who they are. From a case history to a street I'm going to take you to now, people think there's a link. Pilgrim Street, an unassuming street near the cathedral, but with a big history. At one end, you've got one cathedral, and at the other end, you've got another cathedral, and in between, you've got a pub. What more do you need? Pilgrim Street has nothing at all to do with the case history in Hope Street. Nothing whatsoever. Here's the story. In the 1780s, there was a privateer named Jameson, and he captured a French prize ship worth £190,000. The equivalent of millions today. He captured it in the Caribbean, and then he brought the prize ship into Barbados. The privateer Jameson made his way back to Liverpool, where he went to the council as it was then, and he asked if he could build a house, which he did. He built a big house, and they named the street after him. Therefore, it became Jameson Street. However, as time went on, they decided not to call it Jameson Street anymore. They decided to call it Pilgrim Street because Jameson's ship that captured the French prize ship was named the Pilgrim. Hence, there is no link between Pilgrim Street and the case history in Hope Street. Good job the cathedral wasn't built while Jameson was living here. He wouldn't have got a wink of sleep with the bells. Here's a cracker for you. And people who have lived in the city seem to have bypassed this. And it's Sweeting Street off Castle Street. And it's one of the oldest streets in Liverpool. Why Sweeting Street? Has it anything to do with the import of sugar or an old sweet shop? No, it's got nothing at all to do with that. If you live in a drive, if you live in a close, if you live in a cul-de-sac, that's fine. But if you live in a street, you've got Mayor Sweeting to thank for that. In Liverpool, there was no street signs. So people, if they were by the castle, they knew that they were in Castle Street, or they knew that they were in Lord Street, or they knew that they were in Dale Street, or even Water Street for that matter. But any visitors coming into Liverpool, wherever they were standing, they didn't know what street they were in. In 1698, the city fathers then decided to name a street after the mayor at the time, Mayor Sweeting, because he was such a benevolent man. Mayor Sweeting, he wasn't egotistical, by the way. He just couldn't believe that they were actually going to name a street after him. So Sweeting himself asked the city fathers if they would sign the street. So every other street after Sweeting Street that was signed, the first one in Liverpool, it was a knock-on effect. Lord Street was signed, Dale Street was signed, Castle Street was signed, Water Street was signed, and every other street in Liverpool. So wherever you are in Liverpool, or any other city for that matter, and you're asking for a place, a certain place, either to get off a bus, ask a taxi driver, or even meeting a friend, and you'll always name a street. So we have to thank Mayor Sweeting for that privilege. It's not the most glamorous of streets, because there's no fancy shops, no fancy buildings, or no fancy anything for that matter, but what it has got, it's got history. This is Liverpool One, the newest shopping centre of the city. But in 1841 stood on the John Lewis site one of our greatest buildings, built by John Cunningham for the sailors, and it was known as the Sailors' Home. Unfortunately, it was demolished in 1974. After 1974, nothing at all remained of the Sailors' Home, apart from this. Come and have a look. This is what I wanted to show you, and they are the Henry Pooley Gates, and aren't they just absolutely fantastic? And they're here to stay. When I say here to stay, we lost them for many years because they were actually found in the East Midlands, and it took years of campaigning to get them back. And got them back we did. If these beautiful gates have something to go by, what was the Sailors' Home? Well, from 1841, if you could imagine the sailors, whether they're in the Merchant Navy, the Royal Navy, or any other navy, going to war. Don't forget, we had the Crimean, we had the First World War, we had the Second World War, and these lads went through these gates. That's why we had to get them back. The Sailors' Home, I'll tell you what it was for. It was for sailors, no matter where they came from, all around the world, even local, even national, they all came here. And instead of paying for a hotel, they paid for cheap accommodation in this wonderful building. And there they could relate stories of far off lands. Yet, it was the Sailors' Home that gathered these lads together. As the great American writer Herman Melville of Moby Dick fame once said, sailors love Liverpool, for in Liverpool they find their paradise. And where are we? Paradise Street. Lime Street was known as Lambkin Lane because here where Lime Street station stands were lime kilns belonging to a certain Mr. Harvey. And it wasn't until the 1749 infirmary was built on the site of St. George's Hall. Now the doctors complained that the fumes from the kilns were bad for the patients in the infirmary. The kilns, unfortunately, were demolished around 1806. Therefore, with the demolition of the kilns and no kilns to be seen, they had to change its name from Lambkin Lane to Lime Street, which we fondly know today. By 1830, it was the great age of the railway. A mile or two up the road was Edgehill Station. However, the railway really needed to come into the heart of the city, and the chosen venue, Lime Street Station. Stations up and down the country were going to be transformed also, and Lime Street was going to be no exception, with Romanesque facades. Liverpool's first-class architect, John Foster Jr., was brought in to give the new station a Roman theme, Roman arches. And remember, until very recently, these arches were hidden away for many, many years by some hideous, hideous buildings. Look at them now. Just how John Foster Jr. envisioned in all the glory. And aren't they just beautiful? By 1836, and with the station in place, the infirmary had now become a lunatic asylum. The asylum had to go because it was only the rich people at the time that could afford to go on the trains, and they didn't want to see the lunatics walking about the grounds of the lunatic asylum. So the lunatic asylum was demolished in 1836, and by the following year a competition was held to build a grand building on the site. And this was the outcome: Harvey Lonsdale Elms's St. George's Hall. If you think this is impressive, wait till you come with me next door. How's this for a B&B? Because the rich people coming into Liverpool couldn't stay in lodging houses. So Sir Alfred's Waterhouse built this magnificent Western hotel. And at one time, it was huge for the amount of rooms it had, 300 in total. Prior to the First World War, Liverpool's red light district was down at the Pier head. And for obvious reasons, the area became restricted at the outbreak of the 1914-18 conflict. So from the Pier head, all the prostitutes had to ply their trade here at Lime Street Station. And who's the most famous of them all? Maggie May. So much so, they even named a song after Maggie herself. Here on the Plateau stands a statue of Major General William Earle, a Liverpool lad who was actually born in 1833, Hope Street. William Earle joined the army in 1851 and rose through the ranks, achieving the rank of Major General in 1880, the same year that Liverpool received its city status. He sailed up the Nile and his commands were split into two. He went on to fight the enemy who was actually skirmishing with the British, and his other commands went on to Khartoum. Unfortunately, the following year in 1885, he was killed while storming the enemy. He was brought back to Liverpool to be buried at Allerton Cemetery. The statue was unveiled on December the 16th, 1887, and the sculptor was C.B. Birch. And here are our wonderful cenotaph, along with thousands of others. He's remembered every year. We're in the vicinity of Great Howard Street. So who was Howard and why was he so great? Great Howard Street is so significant in the street names of Liverpool. Many people often ask who was Howard, whom the street is named after. In fact, John Howard was an 18th century prison reformer. So we have to go back to the 18th century and Liverpool privateers who plundered French ships during the latter part of the 18th century. They had taken then the French sailors back to Liverpool to be incarcerated in Tower Building, which was situated at the bottom of Water Street. It was from the Tower Building that the French prisoners actually built the now Grade 2 dock wall. He was so shocked, Howard, after seeing the squalor and deprivation of the French prisoners who were dying of disease because of the overpowering, cramped and squalid conditions while begging for food. He thought that the prisoners were being dehumanised and shouldn't be existing no better than animals. He therefore put forward a reform to build a prison right here where we're standing. The proposal was accepted and John Howard's reform of a public prison was going to be the first of its kind in Europe. The wall actually stretches right down to the pier head and beyond. And when the Napoleonic Wars were over, after the Duke of Wellington's victory at Waterloo in 1815, all French prisoners were released. The prison was never empty because a year later in 1816, it became the very first purpose-built public prison in Europe and was known as Liverpool's Borough Gaol. I'm on my way to see a lovely, lovely lady. John Lennon. Never heard of him. Here we are in Stanley Street, Liverpool, and just around the corner is Matthew Street, and I don't think you need me to tell you about what happened there. However, let me introduce you to this lovely daughter of Liverpool. Eleanor Rigby. Eleanor's been here since 1982 as a thank you to Liverpool for the Beatles. What makes it special is it's been made and donated to the city by a man who has had his fair share of fame for 6 decades. Tommy Steele. Who was Eleanor Rigby? Well, she was the name on a grave in St. Peter's Churchyard in Wooton, where John and Paul met. However, the song isn't the story of her life. Paul was just fascinated with the name and built the story around that. Incidentally, the song started out as a Daisy Hawkins. Daisy Hawkins. Hasn't got the same ring to it, has it? Eleanor's a lovely piece of work and is very much loved by the people of Liverpool and many tourists alike. Oh, you're never gonna believe this, because inside the statue is a lovely touch. Tommy placed a 4-leaf clover for nature, a page of the Bible for spiritual matters, a football sock for sport, not sure if it's a blue or a red one, a dandy and beano for humour, and 4 sonnets representing romance. And you thought Tommy Steele was just a singer. Not only is the statue dedicated to the people of Liverpool, it's also for all the lonely people. And if you ever are feeling a little lonely, come over and sit down and share your thoughts. A worry shared is a worry halved. Isn't it, girl? We're in Harrington Street, the other side of Matthew Street, and the Liverpool architect, David Backhouse, had put a nice little twist of humour on his building, Cavern Walks. Have a look at it. What's that all about? A big gorilla putting lipstick on. Even the seagulls are getting jealous of it. It just goes to show, even monkeys take a pride in their appearance here in Liverpool. story. Great name, isn't it? He was actually born Ron Wycherley at Smithtown Hospital, Smithtown Road, Liverpool, on the 17th of April 1940. He actually started music lessons on the piano before he was a teenager and was bought his first guitar by the age of 14. Billy fronted his own group in 1955, but also worked full-time on a tugboat and later as a stevedore, a docker to you and I. He entered and won a talent competition, and by 1958 had started composing his own songs, which was unheard of then, an artist writing his own songs. Billy concentrated less on rock and roll and more on mainstream ballads such as Halfway to Paradise and Jealousy, which incidentally reached number 3 and 2 respectively in the UK charts in 1961. He actually said, "I want people to think of me simply as a singer and not just a rock singer. I'm growing up and I want to broaden my scope." In 1962, Billy appeared in his first film, Play It Cool, modelled on the Elvis movies. It featured Ellen Shapiro, Danny Williams, Shane Fenton and Bobby V, who appeared with another Liverpool girl group called the Vernon Girls. Having had more UK hits such as It's Only Make Believe and I Will, both in 1964, and in Thoughts of You in 1965, Billy began a lengthy absence from the charts in 1967 and underwent surgery for heart problems in 1972 and 1976, which led to his abandoning touring. Despite spending many weeks in the charts, Billy never achieved a #1 single, but he remained popular even after his hits stopped. I Will became a US hit for Dean Martin and for Ruby Winters. His final years were spent on his farm in Wales. He was a keen birds watcher and loved animals. After returning from a recording session in London in the early hours of the 28th of January 1983, Billy collapsed in his home in London during the night. His manager Tony Reid found him unconscious. The next morning he was rushed to a hospital but died later in the afternoon. He was only 42 years of age. A week later his funeral was held at St John's Wood Church in London. Among the mourners were Larry Parnes, the great impresario, Marty Wilde and of course family members, friends and fans. After the service, Billy was buried at Mill Hill Cemetery. This is Billy's legacy. It's got to be the coolest statue in the city. It's another Tom Murphy and was paid for by the fan club The Sound of Fury. He's never been forgotten and new generations discover him every day. During the early part of the 19th century, coaches coming into Liverpool from London would pass this statue, and it looks very impressive indeed. Yet, when people first glimpse it, they would rightly think that it's a Roman emperor. In fact, it's King George III, and you would find the exact same statue of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius in Rome, apart from the king's head, of course. It was erected in 1822, and to look at it, it must have been very expensive. So who funded it? Well, it was the people of Liverpool. Like a lot of things in this city, a myth surrounds this wonderful piece of work. It was said that the sculptor forgot to put stirrups on the horse, and feeling so ashamed, he went away and committed suicide. This is a romantic notion, but it certainly was a myth, because the Romans didn't have any stirrups in the first place, and the sculptor Sir Richard Westmacott lived to the ripe old age of 81, and he died of natural causes. So it just goes to show that some people in this city like to make up these stories that turn into myths. Albeit that London Road's on the periphery of the city centre, it still retains some fantastic history. So come with me and find out some more. Here on the corner of Moss Street and London Road, in 1714, Bonnie Prince Charlie's Jacobite rebels were captured by the Liverpool Blues, which was Liverpool's own volunteer army. 34 were tried on the 12th of January 1716. All of them were found guilty of treason and sentenced to death. However, on the 25th of February, only 4 out of the 34 were hanged by chains. And it was just here the executions had taken place. The rest of them were sent around Lancashire to be hanged and used as a deterrent to other would-be rebels. There is no better deterrent than to hang somebody at the top of a hill, because everybody can see. As we know, history happens every day. It's not just a thing of the past, because one weekend in April will be remembered for a very, very long time in the city. We were invaded by giants. An amazing piece of street theatre wound its way through the streets. 2012, of course, was the 100th year anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. The story of a little girl giant, a lost letter to the Titanic. Her uncle and her dog delighted almost 1 million people over 3 days. Take a look at these memories while I walk down the road to meet my old friend, Dickie. There's a famous old song called In My Liverpool Home. One of the lines in it says, "We meet under a statue exceedingly bare." Well, the exceedingly bare statue is covered up at the moment because this wonderful old Lewis's building is having a major facelift. When Dickie Lewis is bare, this is what he looks like. Its official title is Liverpool Resurgent, but it's nicknamed locally as Dickie Lewis. And to this day, I still don't know why. He hasn't always been on the entrance to the store. He was sculpted by Jacob Epstein when this building rose from the ashes of the 1941 May Blitz and celebrated its centenary. Once again, when all the sheeting and the scaffolds is taken away, history will roll on and a new chapter for Dickie Lewis will begin. Hey, remember this at the top of Church Street? The famous unravelled rope horse? Well, as you can see, it's been relocated here on the Strand. Many people ask what its proper title is. Well, in fact, it's called The Great Escape. And as you can see, it's a man restraining a horse from getting away. It's bronze and was sculpted by Edward Cronshaw in 1994. Some people ask, has it something to do with our famous Grand National? Or does the title, The Great Escape, suggest the great migration of many people of different nationalities sailing to the New World right here from Liverpool docks during the 19th century? So, it's up to you to decide which one of these suggestions it could be. After all, Liverpool was once known as the gateway to the world. We're here on one of the most famous streets on the edge of the Pier head. It was laid out in 1740. It was named, in fact, after the famous Strand in London, as was some other Liverpool thoroughfares were. While we're walking down the Strand, let me tell you about other London and Liverpool connections. Wapping, Kensington, Soho, and of course, Pall Mall. This is the Albert Dock and it runs alongside the Strand. And if we go back to the days of the press gangs, during the 18th century, the 1700s, ordinary people who were going about their daily businesses could easily have been smacked over the head and taken on board a Navy frigate to sail for king and country. Let's not forget either, wives and children were often left without their breadwinner, leaving them to suffer hard times. There was one such story about a lodging house landlady finding a dead body in one of her bedrooms. The landlady thought, what's the best way to get rid of the body without causing any fuss? So what did she do? She was a smart one. She quickly thought of the press gang, so she informed them that there was a drunk in the bed. The press gang didn't waste any time and ran straight to the lodging house and supposedly took the body away and put him aboard a ship. The press gang had their offices on the Strand, and I don't think that they had a big sign saying press gang officers. Do you? Mount Pleasant is one of the most unassuming thoroughfares of Liverpool, yet it has a very interesting past. For example, there is a very small garden dedicated to one of Liverpool's greatest citizens, William Roscoe, who was born right here in Mount Pleasant in an inn run by his parents. Roscoe Gardens. Lots and lots of people just walk past it every single day and don't take a blind bit of notice. But follow me, I'll take you in. The man who brought the country's first botanical gardens to Liverpool in 1801. However, this humanitarian's greatest achievement was when he led a group of Liverpool abolitionists who campaigned tirelessly against the slave trade. Roscoe's abolitionists finally won the fight when it was abolished in 1807. Incidentally, the designer of this wonderful memorial was also a Liverpool great, the town surveyor and architect John Foster Jr. And incidentally, he also lived on Mount Pleasant. So if you want to see his house, follow me. This is where he lived. Foster was responsible for designing the likes of St Luke's Church, locally known as the Bombed Out Church, the Grades 1 listed oratory next to the Anglican Cathedral, and of course St Andrew's in Rodney Street, with now the famous Mackenzie's Pyramid Tomb. I've just remembered what I've passed walking up Mount Pleasant. You can't miss out on this. Come on. This is what I forgot to tell you. This wonderful dwelling is the oldest Georgian building in Liverpool, built in 1767. It's just a magnificent example of Georgian architecture at its best. Right next door, when John Lennon was born, just up the road in Oxford Street, he was registered here like so many of Liverpool's other citizens were, famous or not so famous. You most probably were registered here yourselves. And next door again, remember this building? This was Liverpool's own dolls' hospital. Yeah, Liverpool has its own hospital for the sick dolls, a unique institution indeed. And people did actually bring their broken dolls here. You could have been one of them, bringing your poorly sick doll. Ah, bless. This striking building is the Wellington Rooms. It was adopted by the Irish community, and later it became affectionately known as the Irish Centre for many, many years. It was built in 1816 in honour of the Iron Duke himself, Wellington, for his greatest victory in battle at Waterloo over his greatest adversary, Napoleon, the year previous in 1815. I'd love to take you in, but unfortunately, and it breaks my heart this, it's fell into disrepair in the inside. The whole of the ceiling has collapsed. What a lovely building this is, one of the last remaining of Georgian buildings here in London Road. When people mention Pembroke Place, the old Liverpool infirmary springs to mind. Long before the hospital was built, Pembroke Place became synonymous with an event that happened right here. We have to go back to December 1805. The area here was obviously not like as it is today with buses and cars and everything else. It was just fields with a few buildings scattered about. These were the times of duels, and people think that they just happened in France. They certainly happens here in Liverpool also. The duel arose as a result of accusations made by a certain Major Brooks, and it was all over nothing really. Major Brooks had asked his commanding officer, Colonel Bolton, what salary he was on, and the Colonel wouldn't tell him. Brooks found it so insulting that he challenged his Colonel to a duel. So on a dark December the 20th, 1805, both Colonel Bolton and Major Brooks made their way with their seconds and a sergeant to a field here in Pembroke Place. The actual duel had taken place just about here in the field. Major Brooks fired first after the customary 10 paces and completely missed. Within a second, the Colonel took aim and fired, hitting the Major in the head. He fell to the ground with blood pouring from his wound. Incidentally, and they didn't know it at the time, this duel turns out to be the very last to take place here in Liverpool. We've almost come to the ends of the streets and statues of Liverpool, and we're here in College Lane, but I'll talk about that in a moment, because right here is Radio Merseyside. It's only been here a few years. However, many years ago in 1732 stood Liverpool's first workhouse. This is why it's called College Lane, but I'll go the quick way and I'll meet you on the other side. This is why it's called College Lane, because of the wonderful Bluecoat chambers built in 1717. And this Queen Anne design building is the oldest freestanding in Liverpool city centre, and isn't it absolutely gorgeous? We've come to the ends of the streets and statues of Liverpool, and we've only really scratched the surface, and let's hope that you've enjoyed it. And me, being a massive red, I've got to go into now somewhere that's blue, but it's a great pleasure to go into the Bluecoat chambers. Bye now. Hey girls. But how about this?
Okay, here we go. I've got. Wait. Okay, here we go. Is it my fault you don't know your history?
Hang on a minute. That's the great writer, Herman Monster, you know what I mean? They find their paradise, and that's where we're here. Hey. Now, I'll go on. Yeah, you're on the telly now, you're on the TVC. You'll have to buy it.
Are you using a script? Frank doesn't use a script.
The prison was empty and f***ing hell. Cathedral wasn't built while Jameson was living here because the bells would have kept him up all day.
All night.
Hey, remember this?
Hey, don't be shouting at people. Hey, remember this?
The prison was never empty a year later. Now.
Okay.
It was just up there. Celebrated its centenary. Once again.
Sorry, that's my phone.
Show me one. Ready? You ready?
Go on. This is his legacy.
This is his
His leg. This is his leg. Okay.
That's you. You ready? People just walk up and down the street, yet they don't even know it exists. But I'm going to bring you in. Follow me. Okay. I don't know why gates are always locked on me. Every time I go to open a gate, it's always locked. Ready? Hang on.
Looks like you're going to fart.
I've just remembered what I've passed walking up Mount Pleasant.
That sounds like you passed a kidney stone.
Did it?
Yeah. Just remember what I've just passed.
You could have been one of them, bringing your poorly. You ready?